Welcome to this BookWidgets webinar on teaching mathematics with BookWidgets. So we're just going to jump right in today for BookWidgets as the content creation and student learning evaluation platform. We're going to check widget and question types for mathematics teachers, and we're also going to check the reporting dashboard on how you can efficiently provide feedback on mathematical questions and answers from your students to make sure that you do not spend too much grading time, because a lot of math and science teachers still think that doing things digitally might just and yeah might just make you work more instead of less. But in this case, I will show you how you can do it efficiently too. First, I'm going to show you some examples. Then I'm going to demonstrate how you can create a BookWidgets quiz or assignment for math with a few different question types, a different setup options that you can choose. Then we're going to review that work and see the different settings for efficient grading there. The first examples I want to show you is question type related. So in a quiz, a worksheet, or a split worksheet, or even a video quiz, you have 37 question types now to choose from. And actually, with almost every single question type, you can do something math related. So don't be afraid to really do something else instead of always doing the multiple choice ones, because those are automatically graded. A lot of the other BookWidgets questions are also automatically graded, but provide a different setup. Also, it's more fun for your students if they can switch around from time to time. So I'm just going to go through the questions that you can use for math. There are still some other questions that are not included in this math quiz, but if you think out of the box and very creatively, you can also use those question types, depending on the math subject you're teaching. So as you can see, it's really easy to do a multiple choice question type. This is automatically graded, and you can add a scratchpad. This is an option I will show you later today in this webinar, where your students can add all their calculations. The interesting thing about this is that you don't have to stay digital. So when your students use a paper and add all their calculations on a paper, just gonna take a paper right here, then they can write everything down. They find the right answer. I'm not sure what it is here. Then they can just click here, this one. Then they can put their paper very good in front of the camera, take a picture, and all their notes, their calculations are right up, saved for the teacher, but because it will go to the teacher as well when they submit it. So they can really see the calculations there and even provide some feedback on it. But I will show you that again in the reporting part of this webinar. This is an equations question type where your students get specific symbols to choose from to recreate their answer. So for example, this would be 2 to the second exponential number second. So they know it's sometimes very hard for them to find these special symbols on the keyboard. So that's why this equations question is perfect, because it will provide the special symbols that the students will need to set their answer. Interesting, it will only show the symbols they need, but you can also add some more symbols to just make sure that your students don't know the answer or don't know the setup of the answer, which symbols to use, just because taking a look at this pop-up window. So that's an interesting one too. I will show all about that question type later too. Multiple choice with multiple answers, multiple choice again, multiple choice with multiple answers. This is just a short answer question, everything theory, everything just one answer, like a number they can add here as well, which is automatically graded. This is a group question where students need to create groups of stuff that goes together. So instead of in this type, we're gonna do the cube. Here it is, and also drag and drop like this one here, the grid. And then you can do it like this, but you could also provide an answer and a calculation, like not the solution, but just how they have to like give them the activity, the exercise they have to do, and then give a lot of them. So they need to make the combinations there. It's like a combination question type with two or more combinations. You can include images, but you can also include text and audio, of course. Just a fill in the blanks question. Also for theory, that's a good one. Same for dragging words into a sentence. The table, the fill in the table question is also a very good question for math. It is, again, students need to calculate stuff and add their answers in the table, which is automatically graded. Again, they can use a scratchpad to add all their calculations on the scratchpad here by typing stuff, by drawing straight lines, using all these tools, different colors and so on to make sure. They also have a different paper. So if this is their first paper and it's full, they can just go to the next one. They can type stuff here. If this one is full, they can also switch. So they have multiple papers in this scratchpad. This is also a table question, fill in the table question, but completely configured with every single cell. I added a different border. So the borders are like dotted, a different color. The up border here, the upper border here is fat, it's black. So with playing with the design of each and every cell, you can use one table, make some cells invisible where they cannot click or do stuff. And you can create 3 different activities within that one table because your students can only click here. What you can do next is just duplicate this question because this is a setup that is used in math all the time, but just change the numbers here so the students can practice, but it's giving you just duplicate, 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 change the numbers, and then your students have a numerous interesting activities that are automatically graded. True or false questions could be theory, could also be equations that they have to do where they have to answer true or false based on their calculations that they're doing in the scratchpad activity. The annotate picture here with a video on top, the combination question type where they combine text with images. Again, you can see that everything you can type into BookWidgets is also LaTeX sensitive. So you can just use the LaTeX to make sure that everything shows digitally formatted, good for your students. Again, how you will be adding that LaTeX, I will explain it later too. Primes, composites, again, we're just gonna drag and drop. Also dragging and dropping, which is the smallest to the largest piece. Whiteboard questions where they can do some graphing, take some dots, make lines, connections. Numeric question, just gonna skip ahead. This is just an open question, open answer question where your students they get a nice, get a question where they need to calculate stuff. I will show you later on that you can use keywords to efficiently grade later on with this question type too. Okay, numeric question. This is our latest, newest question. So the picture, count, drag, and drop. Before you could drag and drop images, but they would disappear and just you would move the image to the other. Now the images stay. So we have 3,000. So I will need a few more of these. So you can keep dragging them. Here, the same thing. Like I can do it like this. Obviously, I would do 50 cents and 10 cents to make it with the less, but in this case, you can keep dragging and dropping in here, calculating with bills with money here. Connecting correct answers to different equations, to different calculations that your students have to do with the same outcome. The outcomes are not given, but your students need to obviously use the scratchpad again to make sure that they have the right connections. This is a correct correct sentence question where there are mistakes in text that you're putting in. So this question, a lot of people see as a language question, but you can just use it any way you want by adding, in this case, series of numbers with mistakes in that your students can just click and change up. Like they need to find the mistake and they need to edit the mistake. You can even do for simple arithmetics for your younger students. You can do arithmetic, not crossword riddles, arithmetic crossword riddles, ordering from small to large, so giving different numbers here. And then again, they can start calculating, maybe using the scratchpad to make sure that everything is in the right order. Fractions, grids. Again, the photo question. The photo question is an interesting one. For this one is for geometry, where they have to find a cube-shaped object in their classroom. So it's making sure that math is more integrated in the modern life of your students so that they can just take a picture. I need a cube-sized object. I am sitting in the tile store of my husband. So I can just add it like here. It's not really a cube, but it's a rectangle. So I can add it. My teacher will say it's a rectangle instead of a cube. They can add it and so on. We have yeah, just a definition. Open questions are perfect for definitions too, and so on and so on. So I hope this quiz you can duplicate, because I will send you the presentation with all the links in it that I'm showing you now. You will be able to take a duplicate of this quiz where you want to take out some question types or just discover and check how these question types are formed. You can do so by clicking the duplicate button as well. I have a lot of examples too. Obviously, we do have limited time, and this is a lot to show you. I am gonna skip a few of the examples for inspiration that I'm gonna show you, but again, you will get the presentation, so you can just easily click the links, make duplicates because there's the duplicate button behind it, and make changes of the activity you would like to use with your students, or if you would just like to discover the setup of this activity, that's perfect too. So what I'm going to show you now are some different widget types and widget activities for some basic math principles. So if you're teaching, for example, arithmetics, you can create a quiz. So we have a quiz here where the students need to enter whether it's bigger than, greater than, less than, and they can just continue. It's a table question again here, and they can just fill in the blanks here, continue there. This is an annotate picture question where they also, again, have to add the numbers on the timeline. If you have younger children, this might also be an interesting one. So the numbers in green, then we have the natural numbers in yellow and the decimal numbers in blue. So in this case, they can change colors, they can circle, they can draw. So we have green, so they can just draw, or they can paint the stars, choose what they want to do. You can make it bigger and so on. So this is a nice thing to do. Again, circle it maybe, and so on. Then we have a video quiz. A video quiz, if you just have an explanation of a mathematical topic which is easy or very, very complicated, you can put it in a video quiz because it's a very good way for your students to practice at home, to resurface the knowledge that maybe they already were taught, or to do flipped learning. So in this case, someone is explaining multiplying fractions, and when they're explaining, the teacher is asking questions. So what's the topic of today's math lesson? Okay,
Multiplying
we know that. So we're about multiplying fraction. There's a self-reflection question, but obviously when we move on, they have to start multiplying fractions themselves based on the information, the explanation they just got into in that video. So very interesting to explain abstract mathematical concepts, or to just rehearse, practice stuff with your students when you are, as a teacher, not around in your classroom. Let's see. You can make some multiplication activities with the arithmetic widget. This widget is just it's made to give you as much as just random different activities on multiplications, activities and exercises, but also splitting exercises, just sums, just adding stuff, or diminishing stuff, and so on. The same thing you would be able to do is practice tables with the randomness widgets. Again, another widget where you're creating 3 wheels, with one wheel with numbers from 0 to 9. The second one just has that x in it. And then the third one, again, the numbers from 0 to 9. So in this case, you're just creating random multiplication tables. And then a very special one is that you can also do a Sudoku puzzle. So this is the table, the fill in the table question type. Fill in the table, again, like I showed you that other activity where you do a lot with the cells. You can just create everything you want. And in this case, I created a Sudoku activity that the students can fill out, and then they have to type here what is missing. Moving on to the next, geometry. So for geometry, we have also some other activities. This is a split worksheet activity, where on one side we're showing an image. So the image is showing the height. This is Dutch, so the height, the angles, at which degrees they are. It says that this is given and this is asked, and then your students just need to go with the flow and continue working on computing everything until they can calculate the height. So step by step, they are calculating stuff so they can calculate the height. Also very good step-by-step problem solving, lighthouse problem in this case. Properties of triangles. Again, teaching geometry with different question types, so they're not all the same. We have a drag and drop question type. We have just multiple, you can add multiple choice with multiple answers, that's it. A true or false, or a table question, annotate picture question. So it keeps the math engaging, because it's not the normal activities that you would always get, maybe when you were a child too, when you were taught math as well. This is one that is very adhering to your students' interests, and that is a split worksheet where we're showing a TikTok video of someone solving the Pythagorean theorem, solving the length of AB with that theorem. Your students have to replicate the process of the Pythagorean theorem. It's not the easiest word in English. And then they have to just replicate it on the whiteboard and enter the correct answer right here. And they can use some symbols. So this is the equation question again, where they can use the symbols. Next, just easy flashcards. So in flashcards, you can also use LaTeX to make sure that every symbol, mathematical symbol, is expressed well for practicing definitions, for practicing the symbols. What does it mean? So if you have just a lot of theory and a lot of stuff your students need to go through before they can understand things, and for example, in geometry, this would be the one to use. Another one that I really like is using a split whiteboard for drawing coordinates. And this is the activity, so the instructions on one side, and on the other side, obviously, you have to add the dots. But if you're making it more fun, you can do something like this, where they have to calculate, so it's also arithmetic, 2 times -3. That would be -6. X should be on -6. I think this is X, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I have one dot here, and Y would be -4 minus 3. That would be -1. Okay, so this is point A. My first point would be here. So then when they're all adding their points and connecting their points, they would get a snow globe. And that would be an interesting answer to get your students shouting through, oh, it's a snow globe, of seeing if they get everything, if they can follow instructions, if they can do good arithmetics with the negatives and the plus, and if they can plot very well the coordinates. Very good winter activity here. We're moving on. Let's check the time. Okay, I'm on point. We're showing some more. Again, interesting activities. These are the same, different math subjects here. So if you're teaching trinomials, you should take a look. I have no idea what that is. Probably I know in Dutch, but in English, it's for me a little bit harder. Again, using a TikTok video where someone explains it might also be interesting for homework, where they have to do repetition activities, where they have to just simplify. I could add some more activities as well to make this a little bit longer. Let's see if I can find some more. This is a worksheet with multiple choice questions, but then again, they get everywhere a scratchpad where they have to do their calculations and make sure they indicate the right thing. The good thing about it is that when it's correct, it automatically grades. When it's wrong, it automatically grades, but you can also immediately check scratchpad so to see where these mistakes come from. You can see the reasoning on the scratchpad. Two other ones that are very good to show is the comparisons with GeoGebra. So you can do an integration with GeoGebra by just finding the good GeoGebra sheet view that you want. And you just hit that link, copy that link, and you put it on the text panel side where you choose that you have a link in a split whiteboard, worksheet, sorry, split worksheet. So on one side, you can just embed any type of website. So in this case, we're doing a GeoGebra one for math. And on the other side, you're asking your students questions. You're asking them to do stuff on the GeoGebra sheet. And you're also asking your students to take screenshots and upload them immediately and in the question. So as a teacher, you know what they're doing on this side because this is not recorded inside BookWidgets. This is just a help for them. And if you want to know what they're doing, you need to ask a question like this. Another example of an integration is the PhET one. So PhET has mathematical simulations, for physics too, for science, biology, and so on. So very good simulations. And here, it's also interesting that, yeah, you can just integrate the simulations by copy pasting the link and then asking questions on the other side of the simulation. So your students are gonna follow the instructions as a student. So I need to be at 20 meter per second. I want a launch angle of 35 and I am launching. I need to put on trace of velocity and acceleration. Check. Okay, I can zoom out. Oh, that wasn't it. I can zoom out a little bit and I can just enter all my answers in the questions. So very good is get started with integrations from other math tools. There are a lot of tools. You surely know which tools there are. Moving forward, we have, for example, the active plot widget, another type of widget that you can set up in very different ways. And this one is just like an observation ways for your students to understand how sine and cosine work. When you're changing some parameters, what will it do? How would they react with each other? But you can also give your students annotation tools, let them add some other formulas to create some um, uh, yeah, functions in it and so on. We have a quiz here. Go check it out, click on it, see if you teach this subject, if you can find some nice materials. Examples for statistic, probability, and data processing. An interesting one again is the active plot. So this is the same activity, but it's way different, has a way different setup. First, I get instructions. My students need to go to a website. They need to search for the population numbers and complete the table on the site. So they don't have to give up a function or a formula, but they have to provide numbers. When they're providing numbers, dots will be set so they can create a line. They can also add some dots themselves so they can draw. They have drawing tools, they have straight line tools. When they want to connect some stuff, they can switch colors, they can type and so on. So in this case, your the active plot widget is completely different, but it will interact with the data that your students put in. Another widget that works on data that students put in is the sheet widget. So the sheet widget is on this side, and I've integrated it, embedded it in a split worksheet widget. So again, when I have a link of any website, including any widget type, I can add it on the side of a split worksheet. And then I can ask questions about it. So in this case, I'm asking students, they start with a table, a spreadsheet that is set, but they can start changing stuff in there. So I'm asking them to change numbers and then what happens to their total points so that your students get started thinking that they're doing something with the data that they are getting, that they can analyze how things react with each other and they can think about it. The same thing, which is also interesting, is the chart widget. So if you're doing calculating probability, you can do count. So for the second throw I did, I threw a 5. For the third throw, I had a 14, and so on. So in this case, you can let your students throw dices, which also can be with a randomness widget activity. So you can create again a widget with dices that your students have to throw and then make sure that they can add it to their charts and analyze the data that they're getting for calculating probability. There's some other widgets in here. Make sure to check it out. But I am halfway through. So it's very important that instead of just showing you a bunch of things you can do, is really showing you how to create a widget and how to add your questions. let's get started on that. So I am going to create, okay, I hope you can still see my screen. I am going to create a worksheet activity. So when you're adding questions to BookWidgets, math questions, you can use quiz worksheets, split worksheets, and a video quiz. So you have those 37 different question types in there. If you haven't scrolled down for math, the chart widget I showed you later in the examples on the spreadsheet widget with fixed parts, but also input cells and formula, and the active plot where they can change the equation and watch the plot update based on the equations and parameters they are changing. Arithmetic also for basic arithmetics operation, then you can use this one. Today, we're going to create a worksheet widget. I am not going to create it from scratch. I have some other tricks up my sleeve to make sure that this goes along, because if I'm adding 5 questions from scratch and making sure I have all to add all the symbols, it might take a while. In this case, we're going to create one of the Pythagorean theorem. It's not the best topic for a non-native English speaker, but I'm gonna try to do my best. So the first question I'm going to add is a long answer question. So for mathematics, it's also easy to just add open question. For any term definition your students need to find, a long answer would be the way to go. Even if they have to add a calculation and add an answer of that calculation, you would also be able to automatically grade that answer using a long answer. I'll show you how that works. So first I have my question and I want them to give and explain the Pythagorean theorem. So I want them to give it. So that would be a to the second plus b to the second is equals c to the second. So in my keywords, I'm going to say explanation. No, the theorem. Okay, so I want them to give the theorem, and I'm giving them 1 point if they have that in their answer. I also want them to explain it. And I'm also giving them 1 point if they explain it. So in this case, I will be able to check later on in my grading, and I'll show you later on, to check that if that is a part of their answer. The exact answer of your student doesn't need to be the same as the keywords. If it is the same, it will automatically grade. So an example would be if you're asking your students to explain something, but also to calculate something, you would be able to add the right answer if it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and would say if they have that right answer exactly written like it is here, they get 1 point for that too. So that would be automatically grading too. But I'm not going to do that because there's not an exact answer for this. The other thing that is very important with open-ended questions is that you add a rationale, because this rationale will show your students, will pop up to your students when they receive their feedback. So if they receive it without submitting it, they will be able to compare their answer to the correct answer in the rationale that the teacher has given. If the teacher first wants to grade and provide feedback, this rationale will also come through to the student when the teacher decides to send back the feedback to the teachers. A little bit showing how that will look like is obviously that I need to add it first. So I have an explanation. I'm going to add it right here. Obviously, the explanation stands here, but I really want this to show as a symbol like normal. So what I can do, I can add it two different types. So I can first switch to rich text. And when I type the $ 2 times, and type it again 2 times, so 4 times, it will pop up a LaTeX editor. So this will show up and it will allow me as a teacher to easily add mathematical symbols. So anywhere in BookWidgets where you want to add mathematical symbols, you're just gonna push the $sign 4 times to make sure this pops up. A till second, oops, plus B second is C to the second. Here it is. So now it's written perfectly nice for my students too, without them having to use the brackets and so on. So this is one way of adding mathematical formulas using LaTeX within BookWidgets. Another way is just clicking, again, we're in rich text, clicking the 3 dots, choosing insert, and then choosing equation. It will give you that same pop-up and field to add again that equation too. So 2 different ways, just adding the $signs first, then it will automatically recognize that you want to add a symbol, or again, just inserting it. Okay. I'm gonna add some more questions, and this one is gonna be a special one because I actually already have an assignment in Word, a docs document on my computer. So I want to reuse my Word documents, my PDF documents, and reuse this question and put them in BookWidgets. So I'm gonna import that document, just choose a document I have, select it, and open. And it will do a little bit with the layout, but that's okay. It's not like this in my Word document. It's a little bit nicer, but it's still interesting. It's just setting everything in one alignment. What I'm gonna do is add the question. So this is my number 1 question. And I'm gonna select this is a new question, and it is a text multiple choice question. These are the multiple choice options that my students can choose from. Check. This question is ready to be imported into BookWidgets. Let's do it again with the second question. I'm gonna choose new question. This one is a fill in the table question. So I really have to know how I'm gonna import my questions. So I know this is kind of a table, but how is a question called in BookWidgets? So you really need that knowledge first of all the question types within BookWidgets before you can start importing questions too. But you can also just try stuff out and check, see if it works. Nothing fails here. So this is my table that I want to add to this fill in the table question. We're moving along. We're going to create a new question, number 3. It's a whiteboard question with this question picture within the whiteboard. So I want my students to be able to draw on this image. Import. Everything is added here now. So I am gonna have to make some changes too. First, I want to show you here that you still need to add the correct answer because he doesn't know that from your paper. So to make sure everything is automatically graded, make sure to indicate the correct answer and make sure if the scoring and correction options are to your liking. Next, what I also wanted to show you is that importing from a document also takes on the mathematical symbols. So if you have mathematical symbols inside your document PDF, like here, the delta, and also these ones, it will automatically import that to BookWidgets. First, so next up, these signs that means that your students cannot edit these cells. They're only read only cells. So obviously I really want my students to calculate some of these. So I'm gonna click this cell and I'm gonna say checked input, which means that this cell will be automatically graded and will be checked, obviously, if your students put in 5. If they're putting something else in, it will be graded incorrectly. I wanted to do this one too, and this one too. So they need to calculate one side of each triangle. Again, showing you here all the setup. So every single cell, you can change the border, you can make it dotted, you can give it different colors, you can change the text, everything what you want, you can do it right here. It will take time, but you can reuse this question by just duplicating it or importing from another widget you already have, because that is what I'm going to show last. If you have a widget with some example questions in already that that have a great format that needs a lot of work, like these table questions or annotate picture questions or other questions that need a big setup, just get them ready as a kind of template question and import them from that widget. So I'm now going to import it from a widget. My last question, I have a question right here in this math question widget. This one. I can just check all the questions in here, but I just want the English question in here, import it right here, and it is now in here. So that's nice, right? Now, before I'm moving to change this question, I forgot one thing, and that is my whiteboard question. I really want to do something on my whiteboard question, and that is enabling a rationale. So I'm going to add a rationale, which means that my students will get an explanation of the right answer, of the right way to process this question. Here you can also switch to rich text, and when you're doing whiteboard activities, I suggest you also provide a rationale with an image. So I'm gonna insert an image, choose it from my computer, and I'm just adding the image of the solution. So this is what I want my students to see that they're doing with that whiteboard activity, that backdrop they get. I want them to connect the other angles to make sure that the sides of the rectangle triangle, that it's yeah, just like that. What you also do is adding other correct calculations. So my students will see how you're actually calculating this side right there using the Pythagorean theorem. I'm getting better at it. Another thing, obviously, is checking the correction in the scoring options. I'm gonna take 2 points for this one. I also forget to put 2 points on this one. And then the last one to explain is the equations question. The equations questions gives your students input fields. I'm going to go to preview to show you how the question looks again. Gives your students input fields where they get a box with the right mathematical symbols that they need to use and put in. To make this question work, you need to provide the right answer already as a teacher, so the computer can know which symbols your students need. And obviously, later on in the automatic grading, they can grade it correct or incorrect. How does that work? So in this question type, again, you can always click the I, that little E, to show you how it works. But you have to create an input field using these brackets. And then again, we're adding a formula. Adding a formula or adding where you need LaTeX or mathematical symbols always starts with $, the dollar signs, and ends with $2, which means that if you're typing 4 of them, this equation editor will pop up and you can start using your answers here. You can start adding these LaTeX-based equations. Not gonna do that. Okay, that's it for my questions. I'm gonna move on a little bit lower to general options to go over all the mathematical options that we have within BookWidgets. So I'm just gonna go down, and the first one that I'm seeing here is the on-screen keyboard. The on-screen keyboard gives your students the opportunity to use mathematical symbols, not just mathematical, but if you're teaching languages, it will also be able to add hard symbols that are used in Spanish language or French language. In this case, I want to give my students the math symbols for Greek, and also the subscript numbers and the superscript numbers. So they can use exponential numbers to create their answers with. You can also add extra characters. For example, if they have to make calculations, I can add like percentages or the dollar signs if it's economics, or I can even, I'm just gonna add an emoji. There are mathematical symbols, emojis. Don't forget about those. So I can add these here too, and then my students will see them later on. I will show you again how it looks later on. The scratchpads. I talked about the scratchpad infinite times, that it's a very good way for your students to show their calculations while the questions keep getting automatically graded. So I'm going to enable it for all questions or for specific questions. If you're just doing it for specific questions, you need to go back to the question that you want to enable it for. For example, for this one, scratchpad, and previous question, scratchpad, previous question, scratchpad, like this. So these 3 questions have the scratchpad, the others don't. That's it. Oops. You also can choose if the scratchpad has grid, horizontal lines, or just no lines at all, and enable or disable a photo tool. There's also a calculator, just a simple one or a scientific, just adding it. And then we have the equations editor. The equations editor is it's part of the equation toolbox. So also when your students, when you have an equations question in your activity, the symbols chosen in the pop-up automatically refer to the symbols that are needed to form your answer. If that gives away too much of your answer, you could be adding more symbols. So if we're clicking these two, if it's green, it says always shown. So when I go to preview now and click here, it shows a bunch more of the symbols that are shown in this equations editor. It's interesting because otherwise my students would know that they have to use symbols like these. Now, it might also be that they need to use other symbols than there. So that's a little bit what this equations editor does. You can also have always hidden. You can also just do the groups like this. If you click the groups, then it's the entire group that we're not showing ever. Obviously, we need this one. So I can just show the entire group. Okay, these are all the general options. Taking a look of how that looks in BookWidgets itself. The on-screen keyboard shows up here. Students can drag and drop it around. And the most beneficial thing about the on-screen keyboard is the fact that you can use these symbols in any question. So if you want to a to the second plus b to the second plus c to the second. You can use it here, but you can also use it here. I don't need it, but I can use it if I want. So this is you can also use it in a scratchpad. So if you open a scratchpad as a student, you will be able to use these mathematical symbols in this. These symbols are a little bit less. So they are refined to subscript, superscript, and some more special symbols that you're adding. If you really, really want a complicated mathematical question, you will always have to go back to the equations question where your students can get way more symbols than to choose from. So that's an important one. Okay, I think that's it. So we have that scratchpad. I explained that one too. We have, the calculator. So the calculator is right here. You can click it, students can use it. This is a scientific one, but there's also another one. There's a little bit information about it, general use, caution, and so on. That's in here. They can move it around. They can click again, and it's gone. What we're gonna do now is share this because I have little time left. I might go a little bit over time. I hope you're here to stay because it still gets interesting. But what I'm gonna do next is share this activity and finish it as a student so I can start grading. So I already added it in my preview. It means that it saves my answer. Obviously, your students will start with a clean slate, but it's easy for me that I already have this one in here. So I'm filling it out as a student, just making some mistakes. This one I'm gonna add correct. This was 5, this was 12, but I'm gonna make a mistake. And this was 7. And obviously I used my scratchpad to do these calculations. So what I can do now is to make a drawing. For example, this is triangle A, B, C. I want to calculate this one. This is a question. This is A, which is 3 centimeter. This is 4 centimeter. And I can start writing down and calculating everything I need using, for example, this one too, and so on. I can draw a line and do it for the same one, or I can just use a different sheet on my scratchpad where I can also do some calculations. Just gonna leave it at this one right here. Going down again, I can add the lines so I can see if my student is really thinking things through, if he knows this one would be 4 and this one would be 2, and so on. There is a scratchpad if needed, but I don't think so it's needed. And again, moving up here. To the second. Okay, that would be 7 plus B until the second, but I'm just gonna forget this step. Plus 25 to the second, and so on and so on. Submitting it to the teacher, and now I am gonna review it as a teacher. So I'm going to review. My student filled it out, so I would be able to see it right here with my recent submissions, and I'm opening her work. So I'm clicking on it. So the first thing that we would be able to do is obviously use the filter here on top to hide all correct answers of the student. So my second question that I have correct, you can see it right here, is gone. So I don't have to take a look at the second question at all because it's already graded correctly. So I'm going to focus on the first question right here. What I'm going to see here is that she did add the theorem, but she didn't explain it. So I'm going to check this box. When I'm checking this box, take a look at what the grades are doing. They're already automatically syncing the grades, the ##1 that I added behind this keyword. They're automatically syncing that 1 point to the total score of 2. I would be able to add a comment. I would be able to add audio feedback. But what I also don't have to do is do exactly that, because my explanation that I already added in the rationale in the configuration tells them enough. It gives them the correct answer. So they know that blah, blah, blah. If they compare it to what I'm adding here, that it's not correct, and they also get the right answer. So I'm not needing to enter more comments. I'm not spending more time on giving them the correct answer for an open question. So no spending time on open question right here. Skipping down to number 3, we can see there's a mistake here. More important, I have scratchpad notes. These scratchpad notes for my students, I can make annotations on. So what I can do is just circle stuff. So I can choose a color. For example, I'm gonna pick deep red, and I can circle this one. Like, you didn't calculate it. What's your answer here? Where does it come from? So I can scratch things. This is a little bit hard, but I can do stuff on their scratch notes so they would understand where they have gone wrong in their calculations. Another thing that I can do is click here to add notes. For example, I want to add a note on this one, and then I can enter where are your calculations, like this. So I can enter stuff to the scratchpad notes. It doesn't count in the question, but it gives you the opportunity to see what their calculation process, and also for you as a teacher to provide feedback on it. Again, the grades are already given. This is also given, so they would know that 12 is the right answer here. You would be able to enter some comments. You can also just enter here, and then again, where are your calculations? Because for this one, I don't have any calculations, so I can help you, and so on. So we can add that. Moving down, again, a whiteboard activity. The whiteboard activity has the same markup annotation tools as a scratchpad. A interesting important here is to provide a grade. So they did do some things here, but they didn't really entirely get the outcome on it. So I'm providing them 1 point. So that's something you still have to do, but I don't have to explain how I'm getting these calculations, how your students comes to these calculations, because I already provided in the rationale the image with the right calculations and adding other correct calculations. So how they're doing it. So that's interesting too. Moving down, they have 1 out of 6 because 1 out of the 6 steps are good. They will get all the steps that it takes to get you the answer when you provide the feedback. So again, it's ready calculation. Your students know how to calculate because it's already in there in the feedback. What I'm doing now is sending this back, returning this work to my student. I will show you by resharing my screen in just a minute how that looks like. So your students will get a PDF with everything on it. So they will see which are the parameters that are checked. They will see the explanation. They will see the comments that you're added, the comments in their scratchpad, the markings. They will see again the explanation images that you added. and your feedback and all the right answers that belong to that too. So that's everything actually. The last 5 minutes, I'm sure I'm not taking any more of your time, but the last 5 minutes, I'm just going to go over what I already showed you today. Just making sure that you have these slides with the links behind it. If you want to know more about the LaTeX editor, but I explained you, there's a video behind it right here. So there are options in BookWidgets. There's a calculator, notepad, on-screen keyboard. There's a formula keyboard, but there is also a text selection and cut and paste restrictions. The text selection would be very interesting if you have students that need help, like a text-to-screen reader, because this text-to-screen reader also reads the formulas. So we made sure that it can read the formulas. So that's the only thing why I added it here for math, is because it can read LaTeX this out loud. Again, what these options are doing, then some tips for reviewing work. I did explain everything already, so adding the rationales already, using keywords in long answer questions, use the LaTeX in the comments. I didn't show you that, but you can just in the comments also use the LaTeX by using again, starting with the dollar signs. It will pop up the LaTeX editor for you to use. You can provide feedback on scratchpad, photo questions, whiteboard questions by drawing and so on, and so on. Finally, to top things off, I do have one group for recommendation for inspiration. We do have the BookWidgets blog group where we have from time to time some blog posts on mathematics. It's not this deep dive into mathematics, but it's showing you inspiration of all the different widget types and question types you can use for teaching math to your students. If you have another group that is public or where you would like to invite a lot of other mathematics teachers in, make sure to share it with us so we can keep inspiring others to use BookWidgets for teaching mathematics. And that's it to wrap things up. I hope you learned a lot of things today, and I hope you also got inspired to think differently about using BookWidgets for teaching math, and that the grading process is getting a little bit more efficient using the tips I just gave you as well.